Welcome to another edition of the podcast known as Blending the Family. I'm your host, Tommy Maloney. I am coming to you from Birmingham, Alabama, where it is freaking cold, freaking raining, and if the heater kicks on, I'm sorry, I'm keeping it on because I am freaking cold. What am I saying? I'm fucking cold. Excuse the language. It's been a day. Okay. Sorry, email. Just letting you know, just got an email. It's for my son. So I'm going to text my son while I'm talking to you. So yes, this Saturday is back on for goalie clinics. Yes. All right. There we go. Sorry about that. Anyway, it's been a weird day. I am going to just first off say that you, and I mean it, I mean you, the one who's listening to this, that you cannot take friends, family, life for granted. I'm sorry, the heater's going to kick in, but I'm not turning it off. And here's why. I just learned early this morning the passing of a friend, a colleague, from COVID. Yes, he had other health issues, but again, you don't know when your time is up. So, for example, I am notorious for being an introvert, a hermit, whatever you want to call it. I like to go from the day job back to the hotel. This week, I want to let you know, I've been really good. I've been in the gym. I've only missed one day, and I'm about to miss another day because I'm going to go spend time with guys I haven't seen, coworkers that I have not a lot of knowledge about. And so I want to do more of that. I want you to spend more time with people that you might not know on a daily basis. And so a little bit of awakening, and it goes back a little bit. A few weeks ago, I did take a stress test. Don't worry, it's okay. It just I needed some peace of mind, and what was the conclusion? I'm a short, fat white guy. There you go. So that's why I'm taking my health seriously. I should have done it a long time ago, but excuses, and here we go. Like I said, I've been exercising. I've definitely been watching what I've been eating. No, not that joke. Yeah, I've been watching it go in my mouth. I've been really good. And so here we are. Before I forget, I want to mention on each episode books. I highly recommend reading books. I know I talked about the new Year episode of The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday and Stephen Handelsman. I'm going to recommend another book for you, and that is by Jen Sincero. Find her on Instagram, JenSincero, Jen Cisnero. I can't talk. It's been a day. Anyway, you are a badass. How to stop doubting your greatness and start living an awesome life. You are a badass. You need to get this book. I love this book. I am actually rereading it, and I love her writing. I mean, she is so on point. She is so honest, and yeah, I want you to be a badass as well. Last thing I want to say before I talk about this podcast episode is please please go to the website, www.mydadsadvicebook.com. Pick up your pre-order, the pre-order book. My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m. is on pre-order. And I don't know what else to say other than please, www.mydadsadvicebook.com. It's only $25. Technically it's only $20 and then $5 for shipping. What a deal. What a deal. All right. Fathers Matter. That's what we're going to talk about on this episode with my guest. And actually, let me just say, it's actually, I was on his podcast, Dr. Emanuel Alston. You can find him on LinkedIn, Dr. Emanuel Alston, Alston Jr. I was on his Fathers Matter podcast, and I want to share this with you, the world. And like I said, it's been a weird day. I don't deal with death very well. Just a side note, I spent my time crying this morning when I heard the news, and took my time getting into the day job. And that's something else. Live your purpose, and that's why I recommend Jen Cincerio's book. I recommend all her books. She has some. What's the other one? You are a badass at making money, something like that. But anyway, that's why I'm recommending this book. That's why I want you to live your purpose, to live why you were put on this earth. And again, we don't know when our time is up, and heaven forbid that I get on a plane tomorrow and it crashes. I'm just saying. I'm just putting it out there. So anyway, I'm done chatting. I'm tired. Going to be going to have dinner with some guys, and I might have an adult beverage. I might. Probably. Like I said, Fathers Matter with Dr. Emanuel Alston. And as Terry Crews would say, your success is my success.
Good evening, Tommy.
Good evening, Dr. Emanuel. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you. I want to welcome you to Why Fathers Matters.
I am honored to be here, and I love being able to share positive fatherhood with not just your audience, but with you, and getting to learn myself. And I'm just so thrilled to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you, and we're going to kind of jump right into things. You have a kind of an extensive experience about talking about fatherhood and your own experiences as a father in a traditional family and in a blended family. So we're going to kind of jump right in there and really start talking about some of your experiences as a father. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're currently doing?
Well, again, my name's Tommy Maloney. I'm the co-founder of Blending the Family. It started with my wife and I because we couldn't find any content, any reading material about blended families that really fit us. And when I say fit us, neither of us had really dated other people that had kids, and going through how do you create a positive blended family. And so from there we put our heads together and created this business called Blending the Family, where she said, this is more your thing. So I have a weekly podcast. I have a new book coming out. So when it comes to blended families, as I like to kid, we're like the Brady Bunch, except we can't afford Alice.
So tell us a little bit about your current makeup of your family. How many children you have, how long you've been married, that type of thing.
So my wife Ann and I have been married for 8 years. We have between us 3 kids. The oldest, Betsy, is 24. And then her sister, Becca, just turned 19. And then we have our son, my son, Connor, who is 17. And I always have to, he's getting close to that next birthday. So he'll be 18 coming up in March. And and we have a new puppy named Otis. So we have
Oh,
a fur baby.
okay. Gotcha. All right. So, all right. So you've been married for 8 years.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. And previously, how long were you married? Did you have any
Oh gosh.
children?
I guess I should have warned you. I don't do math.
That's okay.
S- six years because it was 1 year longer than my parents' marriage. So yeah. So 6 years, the first I guess you would call it the starter marriage.
The starter marriage. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a term that I'm not familiar with. A starter marriage. Okay. So you have a starter marriage and then you have the finisher. That's how it goes.
I want to say yes, and I love my wife, and I know, uh, with
Be
COVID
careful
happening,
now. Be careful.
I will be good. I will be good. Don't worry, doctor. But with COVID, Sherry told me that because I started working from home, and she said if we have to work together in the same office, the marriage would not last. So luckily, I'm actually coming from my home office, which we recently separated one office, and now we each have our own office. And I recommend that. There's marriage counseling 101 right there. Make sure you have your own separate home offices for all your listeners out there.
Okay. Well, I will jump into this one because, well, up until recently, both my wife and I were working from home. When we originally built our house, I made sure I had my own office and she had hers. She ended up not liking her office, but the short of the story is that we actually now share an office.
Oh, really?
Yes. So she actually went ahead and bought some desks. So we have 2 desks in the room.
Was
And
that her?
that was her saying goodnight. So she's on one side of the room and I'm on the other side of the room, and it works unless we have both Zoom meetings. So then I'll usually go out to the porch or something like that. But actually, with that part is easy.
Yeah, it didn't work for us so much. So I love having my own, and she loves having her own space as well. So it worked out for us. Yeah.
Understand. I just figured I would jump into that one. Just, yeah, but we can share space. And just don't talk to me the whole time. That's the only thing.
And that's what she said to me too. That's why I'm in my own office nowadays.
Gotcha. I understand. So, all right. So you had to start a marriage, and then you kind of went on. Any previous children from the start of marriage?
Yeah, my son Connor. So he was about 5 when his mom and I got divorced. Which for some reason, the number 5 I found in a lot of divorces, the kid, that's the age of the kids. In matter of fact, that's how old I was when my parents got divorced. And so prior to that, the one thing that I was very thrilled about was I was a stay-at-home dad, and I loved it because it gave me the ability to really bond with my son. Again, because my parents were divorced, I didn't have a steady relationship with my dad. And what I mean by that, I don't remember, Dr. Emanuel, really having that every other weekend or really seeing him on a consistent basis. So when my former wife said, we want to try and save money with daycare, I said, let me try and be a stay-at-home dad. I mean, talk about on-the-job training. And like I said, he's 17 and he survived the almost 2 years he was with me solo. So I'm pretty proud of that success right there.
That's good, because we don't have a lot of stay-at-home dads. However, as I've been talking to people over the past year, I've run into more and more stay-at-home dads or single fathers,
Mm-hmm.
and they allow them to say the same thing, that they don't have a lot of people to kind of share their experience with, because they're looked at as a novelty. So that's very interesting that you decided to do the stay-at-home thing for at least a couple of years.
Yeah.
And you said he survived.
He survived. And it's funny because as I've been going through the editing process of this new book, and I get to reread stories, and one of the stories that jumps into my mind, because I was just recently going through the editing of it, was I went to answer a phone call, and it was my grandmother calling me, and Connor was on the bed and he fell right off the bed. And I'm like, that's par for the course some days, when you're not thinking that your child is going to crawl off the bed. Well, sure enough, they're going to crawl off the bed. They're a baby. Where else are they going to go? So, I mean, there were ups and downs, but for the most part, we had, and we still have a great relationship. And I really do owe it to being a stay-at-home dad.
All right, wonderful. So tell us a little bit about your experience now, I guess in the finishing marriage, I'll call it, and being in the blended experience. So no, let's back up a little bit. Let's back
Okay.
up a little bit. So you're considering jumping into this new relationship, and the person who you're looking to be with, has children. What were some of the thoughts going through your mind at that time?
I didn't want to date anybody that had kids.
Okay. And why is that?
Because I felt that if I was dating somebody who had kids, that was going to take up my time with my son. Because I was that every other weekend father. I had, less than 48 hours with him. And so I wanted quantity time and quality time with him. And so if I was dating somebody who had kids, then it would be, hey, we're going to go here, we're going to go there. It's like, no, I wanted to spend, my time with my son. And I think how I got into that, though, to be honest with you, doctor, and that is, I had to first discover after my divorce, who I was and what was it that I needed, not in a relationship, but me as a man, me as, as a dad. And so I learned right after that I am a creative person. I love writing. I love doing things like these interviews. And so I wanted to build some type of business. And so when I had my free time, that's what I was working on. And so
Right.
when I realized that, that's when I felt I was ready to look at relationships. And ironically, my wife was probably the same way. She really wasn't looking for somebody that had kids. She was looking for a partner. And 8 years later, it's still working, knock on wood.
The wood should be down.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry.
Okay, wow. So you said you you needed to figure out what you needed at that time. And what exactly is it that you felt that you needed? Um,
Yeah, so the marriage I was in, and again, I'm sure your listeners and audience are picking up that I'm a bit of a goofball, and I love to have fun. I don't like being serious. I think life is meant to be a journey and enjoyed. And ironically, as we're talking tonight's the election night, and a lot of stress. But for my former spouse, she is a very a personality type person, and I didn't want to be in a relationship like that. And so we got married because we thought that we were compatible. Well, the truth was we really weren't. And for us, we really didn't date a lot. She actually moved from another state to here to Colorado, so there really wasn't a lot of learning each other's quirks, learning each other's um, dreams and goals. And so I feel that um, it was, again, that's why I call it the starter, because I figured out what I didn't want. And
right.
so uh, it, I had to again figure out what is it that I needed. What hobbies did I put on the bookshelf that were just dust covered that I could pull off after the divorce. And so that's what I mean by I had to figure out what I wanted going forward.
Okay. And so it sounds as though that you and your current wife, you were able to find some, I guess, common ground that you guys could kind of build on together. That's what it sounds like.
Well, the thing is, and this is perfect for why fathers matter, why dads matter, is we met at a so back when President Obama was in office, he created for 5 states these grants, these positive fatherhood grants, and Colorado was one of the states that had those grants.
Right.
And through meeting other people, I ended up at a event that my wife was part of the county that we live in. She was running what was called Building Healthy Marriage program, and I ended up at this event of all the other counties here in Colorado, and they were talking about creating positive fatherhood. And so that was something that we both found a commonality, that we're both looking for to help other men, to help other dads out there. And so, I mean, she is Dr. Emanuel. When I think of the word service, I think of my wife. I mean, she's in Kiwanis. She gives so much of her time, and that's the type of person I really wanted. I wanted somebody that can, help me figure out. I even though I went to a Catholic school in Chicago, I wasn't really a religious person. And so I firmly believe that there are no coincidences in life, and that she was put in my life to help me be shown a better path.
Understood. I see. So that's how the spirituality comes in. Okay.
So like I said, I went to the Catholic high school in the burbs of Chicago, and I enjoyed it. I really did enjoy the time I was there, but I always felt that that was something missing. We some of the cliches of so many, like Dr. John Maxwell talks about pillars when he talks about leadership, And I felt that that was one of the pillars in my life that I was missing. And so, um, again, I'm very blessed that I did meet my wife, and
Right.
she introduced me to the church that she well, we still go to, um, and so it was something that I didn't realize I was missing. And the great thing is about, with our family, was that her daughters were already ingrained in the church. They were part of the preschool, uh, and then when my son would come up on the weekends, we brought him to the church, and he ended up attending some of the events there. And so it was just so much of a win-win for our blended family that I couldn't have written the script any better.
Okay. All right. So let me piggyback on that. I'm jumping a little bit, but you just talked about your son and your wife's children, and that's where the blending comes in, and sometimes the chaos starts. So, talk a little bit about how you kind of went about bringing the two families together. What was that like?
My wife and I dated for a few months before we even introduced the kids to each other. And before we did that, we sat down and said, here's the bottom line. And the bottom line is, if the kids didn't get along, we were not going to continue dating, because it's not fair to them. It's not fair to us. Let's try and make this as organic as possible. And one of the things I thought of, okay, was where should we eventually all meet? And one of the places I thought of where we shouldn't go is like a restaurant. And the reason why is you're forcing the kids at a table, you're forcing them to start having conversation.
And no one can
Again,
escape.
exactly.
Right.
And so what we did was, in one of the towns close by, and it was around the holidays, we went to an outdoor skating rink, and it's an outdoor mall. And so, like you were saying, if they want to escape, if they want to leave, if the girls said, we don't want to hang out with those smelly boys, they had that opportunity to go.
Right.
And so the day we my son and I went up to the rink, and it was a little sneaky because both I played hockey, my son plays hockey, knows how to skate. I didn't realize how athletic all the girls were, so they knew how to skate as well. And that was our first family date, was outdoor ice rink. And um, Becca, the 19-year-old, my son and I were standing on the middle of the ice, and she got her skates on. She comes up to my son, smacks him in the shoulder, and says, "Tag, you're it." And I look up, I go, "Yeah, this is going to work out after all." So that was the first time we all met.
Okay. All right. So, all right, the big question. Okay, you just mentioned you skate, your son
Yeah,
skates, and your daughter skate. So does mom skate as well?
yeah, yeah,
Ah, okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I believe they all were wearing hockey skates, not figure skates, that day too. So
Oh.
kudos to the girls.
That wasn't pre-planned?
No, no.
No? Okay. All right, wonderful. All right, so that was the first big introduction. Okay, so how did things progress thereafter? What are there certain steps the two of you took to kind of help that uh, bridge those gaps, or You just let nature take its course?
A little bit of both. Once we really figured out that the kids are getting along and that this is relationship is going to work, one of the things we made sure was any events we did as a family. So uh, the girls at that time were in gymnastics, so I made sure that if it was a weekend that uh, we had my son, he was a part of that as well, and vice versa. The girls would go to his hockey games. When I was playing hockey, um, the girls would come to my games, but Betsy always brought a book. And so from time to time, I would look up in the stands and see her reading. I'm like, that's okay. That's okay. But it just boils down to, once we had a firm foundation that this is going to be our family, we tried our best to incorporate as many family type events um, as we could. And the biggest thing I will tell you, Doctor, is that we took the word step out of our narrative. And the reason why is we never understood what step meant. Did it mean step good, step bad? So I don't know where I heard it. We incorporated the word bonus. So this is your bonus brother, this is your bonus mom. And it worked out well because we wanted to establish a positive way of blending a family. So again, it went back to my wife and I saying, if the kids didn't get along, we weren't going to force them to become a family. And then number two, we took that label of step out and put a positive spin on it.
I agree with you on that. The label, the stepdad or stepmom, that it kind of has a negative connotation to it. And it's best if you're able to find some other alternative way of identifying yourselves together. So I definitely agree with you through there. So now, so that would lead me to my next question. So you took out the term step. So how did you address the issue of, well, we're jumping a little bit, but how did, once you all became a family and married and became a family, so now what did her children call you and vice versa? That was a big issue.
No, the girls. I mean, the girls call me Tommy.
Okay.
You know, and my son Connor calls my wife Ann. One of the things I will tell you, I had a long conversation with my oldest bonus daughter Betsy, and said, I'm not here to replace your dad, just like your mom is not replacing his mom. And so that was probably, having communication and open communication with the kids was so vital. And I didn't really want them to call me dad. They already have a dad, and he's a wonderful guy. He's in their lives, just like my son's mom is in his life. And so that's where, again, I think my wife and I really created a positive foundation for our kids to be open and honest. And at the same time, that you're not required to call me dad, whatever you want to call me. It, it works. I mean, and not every family is going to follow that path, and that's fine.
Right.
But this is what worked for us.
Okay. But I think that label, or what do you call me, can become a stumbling block because in some cultures, it's not seen as appropriate for children to call adults by their first name, and that's just cultural.
Exactly.
So I'm curious as to how you all may have bridged that gap. So so that's interesting. But the other point that you're making, which you don't find all the time, is that you're indicating that the biological parents were still involved in the children's lives. So how did that work out, your relationship with the biological dads? How did you all kind of manage that one?
Well, my wife's former husband, we're cordial to each other when we're, if we're at, one of the girls' volleyball games or a basketball game. We would sit, by each other. But the kids are smart enough to know that for example, if I'm at my son's hockey game, I'm not going to sit by my former wife. We still, it's like two magnets, so, and my son gets it. He understands that I'm going to sit somewhere else. I'm going to be, the backstory to that is my son's a hockey goalie. And so goalies are a little different anyway. And hockey goalie dads, we are really different because we're always on pins and needles when, pucks are going towards your son's or your child's goal, and you don't want anybody to score on them. So I'm an introvert by nature. And so at his sporting events, I am somewhere else. I am just, he knows where I'm at. And that's how that works. But again, with the daughters, again, my wife and I would sit by her former husband and his wife and their parents. So again, the kids aren't dumb,
Right.
and you have to do what's best for your family.
Right.
And again, for one side of the family, yeah, we're going to sit by each other. For the other side, not so much.
Okay. All right. But everyone is being cordial and communicating with each other.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started dating my wife, we went to my son's hockey game, and at that time I was still coaching, and so I was saying to her, all right, I'm going to go in the locker room and start the talk and all that. And then after the game, my wife came up to me and said, yeah, your former wife came up to me and talked to me. And I'm like, really? How did that go? And she said, it went really well, because apparently Connor was talking to his mom about Anne's daughters in a positive light.
Right.
And so my former spouse wanted to meet the lady that's now becoming part of her son's life. And so it was one of those where I didn't know how to react other than, okay, he's talking about us. He's talking about us as a family unit. And so,
right.
Again, it goes back to creating a positive environment.
And it didn't turn into a reality show.
Thank goodness, no.
Well, then that could have been a whole different spin. Then you could have had this whole reality show on blended families.
Yeah, but in my mind, I'm thinking the cops are showing up. So no, I'm good. I'm good.
You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm always trying to think of different different other avenues you can take. So don't mind me. It's okay.
No.
So that's actually it's interesting because you're really talking about multi-family relationships. It's basically
Definitely.
what you're talking about, which actually is a little bit different than in a lot of blended family situations that I'm familiar with. Because basically, generally, it's just your spouse's children or vice versa. However, in your case, it's gone to the ex spouses as well, actually coming together. So all the spouses and ex spouses are together. So that's actually different.
Well, I will tell you, it's not always a comfortable situation. So, for example, when this past summer, we had a very small event for my daughter Becca, who graduated high school, and so my wife's parents, my in-laws, were in town from upstate New York, and we had the event at my wife's former spouse at they have a public pool area,
Right.
and so that was interesting because we had to spend time at the house that she and her former spouse lived in and were married in, and so then we had to go across the street, and so. But the one thing I will give my wife a lot of credit is, and this is where I've learned a lot from her, is putting your differences aside and doing what's best for the kids. And even though you don't want to be in that house that you spent your marriage in, you have to occasionally just suck it up, buttercup, and again do what you need to do as a co-parent. So I mean, I've felt a little bit of the tension of having to walk into that house as well, and I'm probably going to have to do that when my son graduates high school, next year. I'm going to assume that my former spouse is going to have, some type of party at the house that, her and I bought together and picked out the paint colors and all that stuff. So
Right.
again, you got to put the kids first. And again, sometimes you got to put on your big boy pants and just go right in.
Now, I think that's a very interesting point that you're making when we're talking about okay, blended families, but families in general. But since we're on the topic of blended families, because what you're saying is that you may not want to be um, with your ex-spouse or in the house that you all kind of that started together, but for the good of your child, you're going to put those differences aside and say, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And that's a very mature attitude to take. And I think what happens, or what you may see a lot, is that some adults are not willing to take that step.
My wife, I mean, she is, I mean, by the time we got together, I needed somebody that was going to help me mature as a horrible ex-husband.
Mm-hmm.
And she was the one, she was the one I would get ready to send, the nasty email to my former spouse, and she would look at it and go, no. And I would delete it or change the wording. But because of her putting her differences aside, I got to learn firsthand how to put my differences aside. And so, again, I'm so blessed that we are together.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So, given those experiences, and it really sounds that your wife or your current wife has really provided you, has really been a positive influence in your life and helping you develop to your full potential. What lessons learned would you share with other spouses, other families that are looking to go through or move towards that step of becoming a blended family, or they're currently a blended family and they may be having some struggles? So what kind of lessons learned would you share with them that might help them move to that next step?
Let's talk about the potential blended family. So the potential blended family, again, like I said, you have to put the kids first, and you have to put your egos aside. One of the things I loved about Dr. Wayne Dyer, he talked about one of the problems we humans have is our ego, and we need to go and have an egoectomy, have that ego removed.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with that being said, you have to put the kids first, and don't force a situation. Let it grow organically. If you have a situation where you're already a blended family and the kids are not getting along, I would be the first. I mean, I was probably 14 the first time I went to therapy, and I believe in therapy, and I wholeheartedly encourage other men to go to therapy. When my wife and when Ann and I, before we got married, she asked if I would be willing to go to therapy, marriage counseling before we got married, so we can really talk about, what is it that we want in a marriage. And so if you're in that blended family already and there's chaos, you might want to really think about finding a really good family therapist that can help you figure out what's the root cause of what's going on. And so that's, put the kids first, put your ego aside, and therapy.
Okay. Putting the kids first, putting your ego aside. And this is before you actually move to becoming a blended family, or you're looking to become that blended family.
Correct.
So two things I want to throw out. So if you're in a situation and this is pre-blended family, why would you put the kids first? Wouldn't it be more about the adults and are we compatible and are our needs met?
No, because the kids don't get a say in the matter. The kids weren't brought in this world. They had no say in that. It was, you and your spouse, you and your former spouse. And when again, in our situation, my wife and I said, we will put the kids first.
Right.
And we lucked out. The kids get along. The kids get along great. I mean, even there's some days I cringe about social media, but it's how we call my son Connor and Becca, the 19-year-old, we call them the Wonder Twins because they really could be brother and sister other than my son having brown eyes.
Yeah.
And because of social media, they stay connected that way. And it goes back to Ann and I saying, we're going to put the kids first. I go back to, if I wasn't a stay-at-home dad, would I still have the same relationship with my son? And I'm going to say no. I think I don't feel I would have as a connected relationship. By putting the kids first, you're going to have a better relationship in the long run. So that's why I say no, putting the parents first. Parents can choose. The kids don't. The kids don't always have that chance to be able to speak up and say, I don't want you dating that person, or what have you.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, understood. And the second part to that question is, talk to me a little bit with how you all dealt with discipline.
That is a great question. And here's why. That's where communication has to come with the adults. So for us,
talk about it. Let's hear it.
So for us, the way it worked was, I said to Ann, I said, I will discipline the Wonder Twins. You discipline Betsy. And I mean, I can't think, really honestly, I really can't think of a time where I really had to discipline any of the kids. Yeah, there was arguments and disagreements and annoying sister being annoyed by the brother. I mean, things like that. But a lot of times they were able to work things out before the parents even had to step in. But again, it goes back to my wife saying to me, are you willing to go to marriage counseling? And part of that marriage counseling, part of that open dialogue was, we talked about discipline. Who was going to discipline? What would discipline look like? And so it's really hard, because when a divorced family, you have the children going from one household to the other household.
Correct. Right.
Discipline's going to be different.
Right.
The rules are going to be different. And so I heard this tonight. Somebody said that if their child, let's say the dad took the cell phone away, when that child goes back to mom has to honor that. I don't believe that, because every situation there is going to be different. But if you, as co-parents, can have the dialogue and have the communication and say, here's what our son or daughter did, I'm taking their phone away. Okay, I will abide by that. But it's the other parent's prerogative to say, no, that's between the two of you. We're going to worry about our household. So I feel for the kids. I really do, because when it comes to discipline, you're going to have different household rules, and they do try to be flexible, the kids, but you have to give them a little bit of leeway. You have to understand where they're coming from. So in our household, when it came to discipline, like I said, my wife took care of her oldest daughter. I handled the other two, because they're similar in age, and that worked out for me and us.
All right. So I'm gonna go one step further here. So, because you talked,
love it.
All right. So you really kind of talked about two different issues. So one, you talked about discipline within your own household, within your own blended family. So that's one issue. And so you and your wife, you all had earlier on had gone to marriage counseling, and one of the things y'all talked about was discipline and what does discipline look like and that type of thing. So that's how you kind of resolve that. That's understandable, and that worked, and that's wonderful. But the other piece that you talked about discipline within your own household, but then does that discipline now carry when the child goes back to the ex-spouse? You talking about discipline now carrying over to the other household. That's a totally different ball game there.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I heard you say, you were kind of alluding to, well, once that child goes to the other parent, then the other parent could basically discount what the other parent has set up.
True. I mean,
And
you can't.
I see that as definitely causing a conflict, right? You put
Right.
one parent against the other.
And it can happen. I mean, let's be real. I mean, kids can play those games. Kids will play those games. Um, I mean, I've seen it firsthand in our household. The kids will play my wife and I.
Right.
But when it comes to going from one household to the other household, number one, if you have, when it comes to co-parenting is working together in cohesion. But you can't control what happens in that other household. I
Correct.
can't control, for example, if my former spouse bad mouths me in front of my son, I can't control that. So if they're not willing to abide by, your rules, I can't control that. And so it's a hard game to play. And I don't want to think of it as a game. It's parenting.
Well, I think you may have probably coined the right term the first time, but yes, it is. That's a different conversation, but yes,
Yeah,
it is
yeah,
parenting.
yeah.
Yes, right. And so I was just kind of surprised that you said that because to me, we're talking it's apples and oranges, and you're right. You cannot control what happens in that other household. So I guess I would think one of the better options would be, well, while you're in our household, okay, whatever discipline is in effect, and that discipline is what takes place within our household. Because I cannot control what happens once you leave here, unless you have a good working and communication with the other spouse, and they're going
Correct.
to support you on that. But in some cases, although they may agree with the decision, but because of other issues, they just may undermine you just for the sake of undermining.
Exactly. 100%.
Okay. All right. So that's good. Okay. That's good. I kind of wanted to bring that out particularly since you touched on that, and I can really see a lot of people grappling, with some of those issues. So just, we need to kind of be real and, what's our experience and how do we deal with that?
Well, I mean, I'll put it in perspective, with the election going on, we want our candidate to win.
Right.
And you can't control that. And so, again, going back to once our kids leave our household and go to the other parent's household, that's out of our control.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's hard. And you do want to have, some of us men want that full control, but we're not going to get it, and that's okay. That's learning opportunities for co-parenting.
Mm-hmm. I think that's very well put. We may want that control, but we're not going to get it. And it's okay.
Exactly. Exactly.
I think that's probably need to be the parting words. It's okay. All right.
It is.
You cannot control what happens outside of your own household.
Exactly.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so what parting words do you have for us? Do you have any parting words for us?
I'm going to say my parting words is, as a stay-at-home dad, I learned failure is okay. But as long as I learn from that failure, it's okay for our kids to fail. Let them fail. Let them learn that it's okay to fail. So those are my parting words to you, Dr. Emanuel. Let our kids fail.
As long as they learn from that experience.
Yep.
Sounds good, Mr. Thomas. Wonderful.
Don't forget, pre-order the book at www.mydadsadvicebook.com. Question of the podcast is, what is your favorite dance?